My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today we are covering the essence of Mahan's I God philosophy. We're covering the topic on the concept of darkness, or Erul, which is part 4. Here I'm going to speak about um, what Swamiji states about the omnipresent state and how this permeates throughout all states of existence. So I want to take you through this step by step. So Swamiji here talks about this concept of darkness, and here he talks about this omnipresent state, a state that is eternal, always there. The substratum always exists. Uh, Sometimes we miss it. So here he talks about the omnipresent state of darkness. He says darkness, ego, thought, sound, light, and atoms are all tied together. In the last class, I showed you how the continuum from the matter body, light, sound, the cosmic intelligence, all of them are part and parcel of this, higher order continuum, or what Swamiji calls darkness. So here, again, he reiterates that all of them are tied together and they are in different states. And he speaks about this transcendental God or big I and this small I, which is God that is transitory, continuously changing, forms that are continuously changing. So here somebody talks about they're all one, but in different states of existence. So here, which means that this God particle, you want to call God in that sense of a higher order continuum or omnipresent, omniscient state, this God particle is in everything. Everything here, when I mean thing, means matter and energy. So everything is God in different forms. And that is what we've been seeing in the last few lectures. And I want to show that, reinforce that in today's lecture. So someone asked Swamiji a question. So here he says, can we describe darkness as all embracive and all inclusive? That means, embrace everything and also inclusive. And Swamiji goes on to explain, that the nothing containing darkness and the primordial which has pervaded the whole universe may be described as all embracive and all inclusive. So it encompasses everything. So everything that is changing in different forms are all part and parcel of this substratum called darkness. And this is what we saw in the last class. And he says that this state is all embracive and all inclusive. And all other states could be full, complete, to the extent that what we see and what we hear. So this is to some extent limited in that sense that, we may think something is complete based on our own understanding and our own material senses. But, it is at that circumstances we think it is complete. But he says that darkness is all embracive and all inclusive. So if you see that we think that our earth is all complete, but the earth sits in a broader solar system, and that solar system sits in a broader galaxy, and so on. It goes on and on and on. And finally, we come to the state that though it looks complete for us, but it is complete in the sense that it is limited based on our own material apparatus, which are limited. So Swamiji says that to get a lens of, fullness, a sense of, paripurnam, which he says, is that the all embracive, all inclusive takes place in this substratum, which is the higher order substratum that he's talking about. So here he gives the answer that this state pervades the entire universe and multiverses with different physics, laws of dynamics and laws of physics. It's all embracive and all inclusive. And he says that this is what we see as the transcendental God, and the rest are all transitory. An example of this is that our own universe, right? And again, we see that this universe is part of a higher order substratum with, with infinite possibilities and potentialities. And we see that how did it come together? So we had that higher order Erul state. In that Erul state, there are infinite possibilities and infinite potentialities, right? And we only know in our universe we have electromagnetism, gravity, and all those things. But in this higher order substratum, it is infinite possibilities, right? And these infinite possibilities, by chance, comes together and forms that primordial atom, that seed, that infuses that laws of physics, the four-dimensional universe, three-dimensional space and time. And by chance, Swamiji says, from nothing, something by chance. It is showing that this infinite possibility as an infinite possibilities of universe, and one of those universe is our universe, where the infinite potentialities fuse to form that primordial seed. So through that comes our universe, and there are multi universes, which we call multiverses. So let's just focus on this imprint. So the whole idea is that that infinite potentiality and possibilities formed our universe. The DNA of that infinite possibilities must be core to that DNA, and you'll see that that's imprinted continuously. So we see that that seed, which we call primordial atom, has led to the entire expansion. You know, within seconds, we had that inflation, we had radiation, we had, from radiation, we had light, you know, we had all the basic building blocks of this universe. We had stars, we had, galaxies form, and today here we are. But it all started from that Erul that gave rise to the primordial seed that gave rise to our entire universe. So, and we see that our universe has matter, and that matter is a more subtle version of matter, is the physical body, mind, and the astral. Something more subtle than that is that we have light, and this is photons that I spoke about. And more subtler than that is string and quarks, and more subtler than that is this cosmic intelligence that formed our universe, and more subtler than that is that, you know universal infinite continuum. So we see that that DNA that gave birth, so that DNA that gave birth to our universe is also imprinted at everything in this universe. And the question is that how do we can feel the transitory part, or the transitory God, or the changing element of this universe. What about the changeless? How do we cognize this changeless? And this is the exploration that all these great saints and sages and the saints and the scientists are racing towards discovering, what created this, and what is this God particle or this God substratum. And it requires a fair bit of introspection, contemplation, reflection, and using both, a spiritual and a religious perspective that gives you a much more wider perspective with logic and a scientific lens. And you see that as you go deeper, the convergence starts taking place. And we have a better understanding of the present days and all the building blocks of this universe, ultimately coming back to that substratum. So we see that this Erul state, which is omnipresent state that gave rise to our entire universe. I want to push this analysis a little bit more further. Let's look at this Erul state. This is a state which is infinite potential, and it's a continuum that is infinite, formless, dimensionless. And now we introduce light. And you know that light is a part of our universe. It's made out of photons. And what's really interesting is that this light is crucial for everything in this universe. The basic building blocks of, electrons, protons, molecules, and more complex things in this universe, galaxies and stars and planets and, you know, uh, biological beings, more complex organisms, right up to the thinking man. So we see that this light is crucial, a building block for the universe, and part of the universe that gives rise to everything that we cognize. But we see that light, in this dark room, as Swamiji says, that in a dark room, light can enter, but not darkness. See, darkness is omnipresent. He says, if light disappears from the room, you'll find darkness. So the absence of light is darkness, right? And this darkness did not enter it, but was already present there. So prior to anything, the darkness was omnipresent. And he says this, the darkness is inherently present inside light, because light emerged from this darkness, as we saw how this Erul state, or this higher order state, gave rise to the cosmic intelligence and vibrations and so on. So we see that this darkness is inherently present inside light, and it surrounds everything. Everything in this universe, our organs, everything, every particle, every molecule that we breathe, and everything is part and parcel of this higher order state. And he says that there's nothing which is devoid of this darkness. So this substratum is core to our DNA, right? And he's talking about how this substratum is omnipresent. It's very interesting that, we are all solar beings, in the sense that we are powered by, light, electrons, and all those things that make up our body, that gives us vision and sound and taste through our neural, connectivity and our neural flows. That you know electromagnetism or bioelectromagnetism converts into a measure of experience called thoughts, and that gives us an entire experience of this material world. All that comes from this higher order substratum that Swamiji is talking about. And one who masters this will be able to understand this God substratum that gave rise to everything. So Swamiji in this quote says that nothing is devoid of this. It's omnipresent state. So, and he goes on to say, there is no seed without darkness. Nothing exists without darkness. You see? And he goes on to say that if darkness is omnipresent, then what component in us that has this darkness substratum, which is infinite, formless, dimensionless, colorless, and absence of this material identity? There must be something in us that must inherit this DNA, right? And this is the search that every great saint and sage and scientist, what is it that make who we are? What is it that make this universe? What is it that makes this tick, gives us consciousness, right? And this is where the exploration comes. It's not taking something dogmatically, but really exploring what is the final building block, right? The curiosity is so important. And it's none other than what we call the spirit or the soul or the big I. Because if you look at everything that makes who we are, it is matter and energy. But that which is neither matter nor energy, we call that spirit, we call it soul, we call it raw, we call it many, many things. So what that is that it's neither matter nor energy. It is supra matter, supra energy. And we all know that we have that substratum in us. Without that, the body is meaningless. Our understanding of the world is meaningless. And this substratum, which we call the spirit or soul or big I or God, is none other than this higher order continuum that is imprinted in all of us. So he says that this higher order continuum is core to our DNA. That's what gives light meaning. So without the darkness, light has no meaning. Without the darkness, life has got no meaning. Life is none other than all the experiences of this material world that is enabled by our thoughts, our interactions with this material world, basically the light that is permeating from this darkness. So, what we have here is that light has no meaning without darkness. Life has no meaning without this substratum. And to have meaning, one needs to understand this higher order continuum. And it's core to our DNA. When we mean DNA, it's divine nectar of awareness. That is what gives us awareness of light and life. And we see that that continuum is what gives us an understanding of our universe, experience of our universe. Our entire body is made out of all the universal particles, and everything that is out in the universe is core to our being. But it comes from that darkness that supported the universe as it supports us. So we see that the entire universe is imprinted in us. And more interestingly, that we see that the whole continuum, the higher order continuum and the universe are core to our being, both our physiology, our biology, our mental state, our spiritual state, our astral state, and in all the states. And one who understands that will see that actually the higher order state is what is the permanent state. And if we understand that, we see that we are core to the universe, and the universe is core to us, and the higher order is core to us. So we see that we are core to the universe and the higher order continuum. That's how the higher order continuum is core to our being. So we see that that seamless integration is very important, as we saw in the last class, between the beautiful dance between the transcendental God and the transitory God. The beautiful dance between potential energy and the kinetic energy, and how it goes back. And one who understands this dynamic will always be inspirational, always will have an awesome life, because the dance takes place not just in meditative state or in deep sleep state, it takes place in every state of the existence, of knowing that higher order continuum is imprinted in every facet of our lives, while waking and while meditating and while sleeping, that beautiful dance. So we see that when one understands this dynamics, this beautiful convergence between small I and the big I, between transcendental God and the transitory God, and between the higher order continuum, and in every state of our existence, we see that we are never separate from that higher order continuum. The day we see we are separate, that is the state that Swamiji calls an ignorant state, where we are not aware of it. You see, when we become too focused on the material existence, we sometimes miss out the subtle things. From time to time, when we go into that subtle experience through meditation, introspection, contemplation, reflection, we understand the dynamics between this higher order continuum and the different states of our existence, and the beautiful interplay between both. And that's what makes life exciting, enriching. Though we may have a finite life, within that finiteness, we are anointed by infinite. Though we have a formless, formed body, within that, we are anointed with the formless. Though our body is perishable, we are anointed with this imperishable, higher order continuum. Though our body is mortal, we are imprinted with this immortality. One who is sees themselves not separate from this higher order continuum is who we call a Mahan, and one who is that universal personality. And I remember someone asking Swamiji this question: Swamiji, how many hours do you meditate a day? He says, Swamiji is meditation, meditation is Swamiji. What he's saying is that he is one and all, maybe in different states, but he has never decoupled from the higher order continuum. And if we did that, I think our life will be awesome, inspirational, connected, and we'd have all the infinite possibilities and potentialities to understand our own meaning in this universe. Sandosham. Thank you very much.